Jorge, please look at chat. Hola familia, ¿cómo estamos? Buenas tardes, buenas tardes, buenas tardes. My name is Jerónimo Saldaña, and I am a proud staffer at LatinoJustice Parole based in New York City, and I'm really excited about our briefing today. I'm going to bring on two of our panelists. My illustrious colleague, we have Jorge Renaud from the great state of Texas. He is based in Austin, and my other illustrious colleague, another Jorge Luis Vasquez. ¿Cómo están, jóvenes? ¿Cómo están?
Órale.
Buenas tardes.
Buenas tardes.
Eso mero. So, familia watching at home, we want to thank you so much for tuning in to today's debrief. It's the last in a series created by the brilliant Diana de Jesus Medina from New Jersey. Just a little side information there for you. Lydia Diaz and Mike Amador. So before we start, huge gracias to them for their amazing efforts, their accomplishments, for being our thought partners in this collaboration. So today, mi gente, we're going to start off talking a little bit about our criminal justice reform program, Reenvision Justicia, what we do, how we do it, how we're mobilizing our communities. And we're going to do it in a way where we present this platform we just came up with. Jorge Renaud is surfing out in Texas. He's got a little surfboard. That's how you see his computer moving around there. We're going to talk about a platform we've created here at LatinoJustice in support of Black lives as Latinxes and what we can do together with our own gente to end the criminalization of our people. So let's do it. Vámonos. Let's get into this. Gentlemen, let's start off with a little bit of an introduction. Let's start off with age before beauty. So let's go with, you're both beautiful and young, you know, so I'm gonna mix it up. Let's go to Jorge Luis Vasquez out here in New York City. So if you hear me say New York City, that refers to Jorge. If you hear me say Austin, that refers to el mero mero chicano, the OG Jorge Renaud. So starting off, Jorge Vasquez, how about a little intro from you, my friend?
Hi, and thanks for putting this together. My name is Jorge Luis Vasquez. I'm an associate counsel with LatinoJustice Parole, based in New York. And as an attorney with LatinoJustice, one of the pillars that I work on, and LatinoJustice has 6 pillars, which are 6 focus groups that the majority of our work is based out of, is criminal justice reform. and Reenvision Justicia belongs to that pillar.
Gracias, Jorge. Muchas gracias. And now let's move it on to Austin, where we have my esteemed colega who's been with LatinoJustice for almost 2 years now. Almost 2 years. El mero mero Jorge Renaud, who's also a poet and an author and so many other things. But let's start me with a shorter intro. Ahí vamos.
Yeah, and he's uncomfortable in his shirt right now because, like anyone else doing Zoom, you always have a Zoom shirt, right? And I put it on, and I'm not used to having a collar. My name is Jorge. I am the Southwest Region Director of Policy and Advocacy for LatinoJustice. Been here actually like about 14 and a half, 15 months, and my goal here in Texas is to lift up and amplify the voices of the Latinx community who have been incarcerated or directly affected by our penchant here to put people in cages. And I think we're doing a good job here. We're collaborating with a lot of organizations, with grassroots leadership, with a lot of Facebook groups, and we'll talk more about that work here later. And it's just really good to be part of an organization that actually sees the need to amplify our voices in the way that LatinoJustice does. Thank you, Jerónimo and Jorge. It's good to be here.
Gracias a ustedes, gracias a ustedes. So let's jump right in. So what we want to do with the next 52 minutes we have is tell you a little bit about the work we do, Reenvision Justicia. So I'm going to kick that off. Then we're going to show you some clips from this mini documentary series we've made. Thank you so much, Google. Showing how the criminal justice system impacts our gente. So we're going to see 2 clips from that short mini documentary series, and then we're going to move on and hear from these 2 brilliant gentlemen. Entonces, si está bien, jóvenes, let's jump right into my presentation, a little PowerPoint. And then we have Mike Amador out here keeping time. Thank you, Mike. So please let us know if we're too long-winded and cut us off. So ahí vamos. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And let's start this off. So thank you, Canva. And hopefully y'all can see this. Can you see the slideshow, gents? I think you can. Yeah. We look great. Look at us. We're right in the side, a little column. We look beautiful. Oh my goodness. This is one of the most best looking, most attractive panels I've seen in a while. My gosh. Oof. All right, here we go. Here we go. Reenvision Justicia. ¿Qué es? ¿Qué es Reenvision Justicia? Well, I'm going to let you know. It's a national hub of Latinx's working to end the criminalization of our communities. When I started doing this work about a decade ago, Juan Cartagena, the gentleman you see in the left with the hat, was the only Latino I knew nationally who would speak out against the killings of Latinxs, who would speak out against the failed war on drugs. And I didn't know there were more of us. So Juan is an inspiration and the reason we're all here today. But I'm also glad that Juan is no longer as unique as he was a decade ago. There are so many more of us, thanks to this Reenvision Justicia hub. So before we start, often enough, we don't get to say the names of folks who have been killed by cops. And I think it's important to take a moment to acknowledge them. This is who we're doing our work for. This is who we're fighting for. So I'll let you read what's on the screen. Sadly, these are just Latinxs and Black folk as well who have been killed just since February. And there are many more, but these are the ones that I was able to find and put up. So there are their names. Those are our gente. We hold them in our hearts. We think of them. Gracias, mi gente. We fight for them. And without saying, it just has to go without saying, as a Latinx organization, we are unapologetically pro-Black. We combat the anti-Blackness within our organization, but we're also pro-Black in solidarity and in action with our Black brothers and sisters. So what are we doing? What do we do? ¿Qué es nuestro programa? So we have a convening. We convene our Latinx folks for transformational and narrative change. As you can see aquí, we create regional spaces in the country to bring our gente together, to help change hearts and minds, to help move policy forward. And we do it through popular education, we do it through policy reform, and we do it through litigation. Narrative change piece, as I said before, we were one of the few, if not only, organizations to do a poll of Latinxs that included Afro-Latinos. And within that, we saw that folks, for the most part, get it. They understand the criminalization of our gente. They understand the connection between immigration and criminal justice and economic justice issues. They see the intersections of that. So to continue building that narrative change, to continue creating that transformational thought process, we were able to create a mini documentary series, 7 mini documentaries, and 1 framing doc by renowned director Carlos Sandoval, showing how it impacts our communities. And these are teaching tools that we plan on using in our community to connect the dots and further mobilize folks. And just in a little bit, I will show you clips from this film, and you'll find out how you can use them, how you can get us to work with you in your communities on showing these films. We also are excited to announce an upcoming collaboration with Latino Rebels. So every Friday, we'll get to work with Latino Rebels. There you see Julio Ricardo Varela, one of the founders, on online webinars and town halls. This was when we did on defunding the police a couple of weeks ago. You see folks from Mi Gente, you see folks from Worth Rises, you see Eunice Hernandez and our own Jorge Vásquez there. This is an important part of how we reach out directly to our people to inform them and how it impacts our communities. So what exactly does our network do? So we're a national hub of Latinx leaders, activists, academics, and directly impacted folks. We serve as a hub to share information, to support, each other on campaigns, and to move forward on our issues. We have annual convenings. The last one was in Brownsville, Texas, and it was incredibly exciting, over 100 folks. And the folks in the room looked like a family gathering. We had abuelitas, we had advocates, we had young kids running around. It was beautifully symbolic of who our communities are, and they were all there to learn together about how the criminal justice and immigration systems intersect. We have monthly meetings for our folks. We serve as a digital resource hub. We have a leadership circle. So unlike other organizations, our leadership circle is made up of folks that are directly impacted by our issues to help steer us forward, to help inform the decisions we make. And of course, we engage in legislative advocacy. This, if y'all don't know, is the very fierce Alejandra Pablos. She is a reproductive rights advocate, an immigration advocate. She's a phenomenal, phenomenal leader. And one of our mini documentaries is about crimmigration, how the criminal justice system and the immigration system intersect. So we also connect the dots. And as you'll see in our platform, and you'll hear a little bit later from our colleagues, one of the most important things we do is show how A connects to B, connects to C, and how we're not criminalized in a silo, but it intersects with all of our issues. This is the brilliant Claudia Munoz in Texas, I believe the co-ED of Grassroots Leadership. And thanks to the brilliant leadership of Jorge Renaud, we're working to free folks in Texas. He'll be able to share more, but an astounding fact, 14,000 people currently in Texas prisons have been approved for parole. What does that mean? They should be out, they can get out, but they're still behind bars. And Jorge can share a story of one man who was granted parole but died in prison because of COVID. This is an emergency. This is of utter urgency. So I'm excited to share more of that with y'all. And these are the platforms that we'll get into. So that is in brief the work that we're doing. So let me come back over here and share one of the videos. So the videos you're about to see are graphic. The first video we're going to show you is police abuse against Latinos. It's about a minute long, and I warn you, it's very graphic, so if you need to turn your cams off for 1 minute, you're forewarned. And then after that, we're going to show you our trailer, and then we're going to jump in and have a conversation with these guys. Sa bueno, fellas? Orale. All right, so here goes our mini documentary. These are all available for you at the Decolonizing Justice website. And we can give you our email addresses after if you want to learn more. So let's start off here. I'm going to show you this short 60-second clip. And again, it's very graphic. So if you need to turn off your cam, it's about a minute long.
Your hand! Your hand! We've been doing a lot of shots fired! Shots fired! Ruben! Policia! Manos! Manos!
Luis, are you okay? You all 5 men! 5 men! Papa!
Colonialization, racial dominance, the notion that there is a superior race in the United States has everything to do with control of the population.
Now we're going to share the second one, so give me a moment and we'll set that up next. All right. And this is the full trailer for our framing documentary directed by Carlos Sandoval. And let's go ahead and watch that now.
For as long as this country has existed, the dominant narrative has depicted Latinos as alien, as illegal, and as somehow predisposed to criminality. These are stubborn remnants of a colonizing practice that seldom gets discussed, but yet is still embedded in the U.S. criminal justice system. In order to decolonize oppression, we must first make visible the voices of those most directly impacted by it. Latinos have historically been overrepresented in the penal system, and yet underrepresented in the tables that determine their fates. The stories you're about to see go beyond buzzwords that currently dominate the public dialogue about criminal justice to show the faces of those directly impacted. This is what systemic oppression looks like. The criminal justice system needs to not only be reformed, it needs to be dismantled. It needs to be destructured. It needs to be decolonized.
Gracias a todos. Those are framing documentaries. And we're back. And again, that's part of our narrative change work. So we'd love for folks to see more of those. We can share info and share more about that. But now to get into our conversation. So let's make all these boxes equal. I want to talk about this platform that we created in support of Black lives. You know, we understand that policy change and reforms are wholly insufficient at this moment. So the platforms we're supporting here are indeed to promote transformational change. And with that, let me show you the platforms, and I'd love for Jorge Luis Vasquez to get us started, and we can jump right in. So let me go ahead and share those. And then Jorge, I would love for you to jump in and talk a little bit about these. So there we go. All right.
So the first one is the importance of the Latinx community to defend Black lives and to unapologetically announce that Black lives matter. Too often when we discuss criminal justice, we think of Black lives, and then when we discuss immigration or immigration reform, we talk about brown lives. But the two systems are not separate and apart. In fact, they mirror one another. And it's imperative that Latinxes stand beside our brothers and sisters who are Black and say that Black lives matter. It's also important to recognize that there are individuals within the Latinx community, such as myself, who are Black men, who are Black women, and that we need to debunk any sort of negativity or stereotypes that's associated with being Black. And this anti-Blackness, we need to recognize that it comes from a colonial mindset. So we need to decolonize ourselves, and decolonizing ourselves leads us to this importance of understanding that Black lives matter, understanding that police officers are killing Black men, Black women at horrible rates, and that, you know, there's an old saying in the Latino community that in Spanish is hoy para ti, mañana para yo, which literally translates into today for you, tomorrow for me. What we saw prior to this current administration was that Black men were being killed by law enforcement, and rarely were Latinxes mentioning the horrors that were going on. Fast forward a few years under this current administration, and now we see Border Patrol killing Latinxes at the border. We see militias attacking our people. And it's important that we recognize this and that we stand to defend our Black family. Is the volume working or no? I know.
It should be good now. So hopefully folks on the webinar should be able to hear us, and they should be able to hear us now on Facebook. So we're just going to check that again. There we go. We're good to go. We're good to go. All right. Sorry about that little technical difficulty. Jorge, you were saying.
Yeah, I was saying that, you know, it's imperative to do the work that we do without acknowledging that Black lives matter. When we look throughout history, we see that the way Blacks and African Americans were treated in this country was repeated to brown communities. We know that too often people look at criminal justice reform and look at it as a Black issue and look at immigration reform as a Latinx or brown issue, when the reality is that the two mirror each other, and that an attack on one is an attack on the other. But more importantly, until we fix one, we won't be able to fix the other. So we need to fix both simultaneously. And in order to dismantle the structure's oppression and then the war on Black lives, we need to unite as a Black and brown coalition. And at LatinoJustice, you know, we're standing unapologetically and announcing that Black lives matter, announcing that we understand that there's anti-Black rhetoric within the Latinx community, despite Latinx's also being of Black origin, Latinxes such as myself, for example, and understanding that we need to have these difficult conversations with the outside world, but sometimes we need to have these conversations and discussions with our own families. And that's one of the things that we're doing as an organization, is ensuring that we're saying Black lives matter, that we're supporting, and that allies, we're letting them know this is how we're supporting you, and this is how this relates to our community. And we're using it as an opportunity to educate, to organize, and to empower. And those are three important factors that are needed with any movement. And I'm happy to be here, and I'm proud of the work that we're doing at LatinoJustice around this.
Gracias. Gracias, Jorge Vasquez. Jorge, Renaud, and Austin, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think that referring back to the whole, you know, colonization process, I think one of the mechanisms that colonizers use, of course, is to divide. The fact of the matter is that the great majority of the individuals in this country who are Latinx origin are from Mexico, and they're concentrated in the Southwest and the West. They have been for a long time. And their struggles, when they were amplified by the organizations that were trying to lift them up, were trying to lift them up in such a way that was geared toward assimilation. And they were very much at odds with some of the Black liberation theologies of the 50s, the 60s, and 70s. But the fact is that the more radical Latinx Chicano movements, right, very much took a lot of their rhetoric, took a lot of their organizing, took a lot of their ideologies, in fact, from the Black Panthers. The prison liberation movement began with African-American prisoners who were fighting for the right to study Islam in prisons. The debt that we owe to our African-American comrades is immense, and we have to recognize the fact that we are in this together. And there is unfortunately a huge strain of racism that runs through a huge swath of the Chicano community in America. And I think that unlike our comrades on the East Coast, right, who are in largely from Puerto Rican, Dominican origins, who have more day-to-day familial historical acceptance and recognition of the fact that they are, in fact, of African heritage, we have not yet accepted or come to terms with that, I think, and that's something that we need to open up and look at and examine.
Gracias, Jorge. On that, I want to move us into I'm going to skip around on these platforms a little bit. I want to talk about abolishing cages. You know, it's rooted in our work. It's what do we mean? So I'd love for you to unpack a little bit and discuss our work. When we say abolish all cages, including detention centers, what do we mean? What do we want to see? And Jorge Vasquez as well. When we talk about defunding the police, what do we mean, and how does it impact Latinx lives? So maybe if Jorge Renaud could start it off, and then we could jump in and unpack that a little bit for folks. We hear these words a lot, but I think folks don't really know what we mean. So let's go ahead and do that.
Yeah, thank you. You framed this earlier about narratives, and I think narratives are basically stories. And the stories that are told about the individuals who belong in cages. I mean, when the current president I think one of the first things that he said when he announced he was running for president was talking about the people coming over from Mexico, or the immigrants in general, right? The Latinx community, that they were rapists and killers, and that maybe a few of them were good citizens. Those are the stories that are told. When you talk about justice, when you talk about the concept of justice in this country, it's intertwined with judges and courts and incarceration and cages and punishment. That has been the overall controlling paradigm of justice in this country. When we talk about abolish cages, we're not just talking about taking a key and letting everyone out of a cage tomorrow, because what would happen would be within a week they would be full again, because we're still stuck in that current paradigm. What we're talking about is using our imagination to envision something different. And when we talk about something different, is one, talking to the communities from where these individuals are uprooted from and put in those cages. And what do the communities want? What do the communities see? What are the alternatives that they want when someone commits harm within that community? And much of that involves taking monies away that go to cages, that go to the court system, and investing them in community-based mental health programs, behavioral health programs, sustainable employment, equitable housing, all of the things that have been where money has been siphoned from in order to construct and maintain the current incarceration system. So we're talking about abolition. What we're talking about is no longer relying on the current system of punishment and incarceration and dehumanization and basically throwing people away, right? What we're talking about is looking at it totally different. And of course, I think one of the things that we're also talking about is, when we're talking about criminal justice, I think we're also talking about people who are caught up in the immigration detention system. A cage is a cage is a cage. And one of the things that I think that we need to realize is that our reliance and our willingness to accept the fact that one individual deserves to be in a cage, right, for a certain crime, and deserves to be there for a certain length of time, while other individuals do not deserve to be there. That paradigm that we bought into has allowed us to say, well, you know what, if you cross the country one time, we're going to put you in a cage. And if you go back and you cross the country a second time, we're going to put you in a cage now for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, right? Our acceptance of this entire paradigm has left us in a situation where this is the only construct of justice that we can actually conceive of. Okay.
Right. And just adding to that, I think it's important that we recognize who's being caged and what exactly that looks like. Back in the end of 2018, I was fortunate enough to volunteer with my colleagues at LatinoJustice, and we went to Carnes Detention Center. And a detention center is a jail, it's a prison. And going in there to assist asylees and seeing children as services with a prison ID on them, dressed like a prisoner, integrated into a prison life. And in fact, when you're walking into the complex, seeing police cruisers with baby seats, we have to question what our values are as a society when we're imprisoning and caging our children. The same thing is true when we're prisoning and caging individuals who have the presumption of innocence, right? Someone who's accused of a crime, you're hearing people say, well, you know, you need to give them bail because they're a danger to society. Well, we know that's false. And we know that's false because for many of these individuals, if they forego their constitutional rights and pled guilty, they would be let on into society a free man with a criminal conviction. So we know that it's not about safety. And as Jorge Renaud was discussing, we also have a huge pandemic in our country of caging individuals who have mental disabilities or individuals who have a disability, period.
Point.
And we need to make sure when we're talking about defunding, when we're talking about changing the systems, that we're talking about refunding and ensuring that adequate resources are being given to the communities. We need to make sure that someone who has a mental illness is able to get treatment outside. There's no reason that someone should have to wait until they're incarcerated to be formally diagnosed with a disability, to formally get the attention that they need. I think one thing that we are seeing as a society with COVID is this heightened idea of who gets the benefits of the criminal justice system and who does not. So when we look at individuals like Michael Cohen, who pled guilty to countless federal felonies, was released early. Whereas we have people in Texas who qualified for parole and are waiting to be released right now. We also, when we're talking about incarceration, we're talking about individuals who are also under monitoring of the government. So looking at Michael Cohen again, he was recently in the news because he was seen that he was supposed to be in house arrest, but instead he was out having dinner at a restaurant. If you notice and you look down to his ankles, he didn't look like any of our people. When our people are released in house arrest, they have monitoring bracelets on. These monitoring bracelets are extremely expensive and they deplete funds and resources from our community. So when we say defund, what we're saying is stop profiting off of our communities. Stop profiting off of our brothers and sisters through the prison industrial complex, many of them which are for profit. Many of these immigration centers, which are really just immigration jails, are private prisons. Private prisons ran by publicly traded corporations, who we won't name here because, you know, this is just not what we do, but it's imperative that people at home recognize that whenever we're saying it's okay to cage someone, we're saying it's okay to also profit off of them. It's okay to use prison labor.
Well, and on that, and thank you, Jorge, thank you. And if folks want to learn more, we did do a really phenomenal, informative webinar on it. We can share that link, mail that to folks. I guess 2 points that I'd love to dig a little deeper on, since this is so crucial to our work. You know, it's not about reforms by any means. We work on reforms with the greater goal of this vision that you've both laid out. And if folks do want to learn more about funding but where the funding comes for these private prisons, these companies, check out the work of Worth Rights and our colega hermana Bianca Tylek, who's just amazing in this sphere. Jorge, Renaud, could you speak a little bit about your work on Texas parole that I mentioned and how it fits into the frame of abolition? And of course, the question you always get when you say no cages, somebody's going to say, what about the bad people, Jorge?
Yeah, they'll say.
What about the bad people?
Well, they'll say, what happens when? And I think that one of the points that abolitionists want to make is that, again, when they talk about a lack of imagination, is we cannot conceive of the inevitability of violence. We will always say, well, something's going to happen. There's going to be a serial killer. Somebody's going to be raped, because we cannot conceive of a society that does not inculcate and create and nurture and basically reward violence. We can't conceive of creating that. Yeah, here in Texas, Jorge alluded to that. There were, I'm not sure of the number now, about 2 months ago, there were almost 15,000 people incarcerated in Texas prisons that had been granted parole. Been granted parole. They were waiting on programming or a certain date in order to be released. At least 4,000 of those had been granted parole in previous to January of last year. So we ended up writing them, me and Claudia Munoz, who you saw earlier, our organization, Grassroots Leadership. We received over 1,000 responses back, and we're in the process now of contacting those families in order to try to get them to educate them and inform them and aim them at the Capitol, because what's going to happen in the 2021 session is they're not going to allow people to be down there. They're going to have to elicit and have people appear via Zoom or some sort of medium such as this. So we're trying to get ahead of the game. So this entire process is we have been collaborating and nurturing groups like, say, the Rally for TDCJ Conditions, Transforming Texas Justice, Texas Prisons Air Conditioning Advocates. And what we're trying to do is get them together to educate them and inform them and say, what is it that you want to happen in TDCJ? How do you want to move? How do you want to move the parole board? What sort of strictures do you want to create? What sort of structures do you want to create? Because almost all of these people, the reason that the parole board says they haven't released them is because they all by statute required to take some sort of programming. Because of COVID, they're not able to transfer them to the programs where that programming is being offered. So they're offering some sort of in-cell modules, which are totally inadequate, but in any case could be provided out in the world. So, I mean, out in the free world, not in prison. So it's part of a larger process, right? There are 15,000 people awaiting release who have been granted parole. That's more than maybe the entire prison population of maybe 13 or 14 states. So that's some of the stuff that we're doing here in Texas. We're also collaborating with the Immigrant Legal Resource Center. We were to provide workshops for individuals to try to get them to see the connection between immigration and criminal justice. So yeah, all of this is geared toward, one, identifying and listening to the individuals who are most impacted by incarceration. Two, finding a way to figure out, to give them the space, right, and the time and the opportunity so that they will tell you what it is that they want to change. And three is educate and inform them and provide them the support so that they will actually be part of that change. Because we can't go in there and say, here's what needs to happen, here's how you do it. No. What do you want to happen? How is it affecting you? And how are we going to support you in that change effort, right? And that gets messy. You have people on Facebook arguing at each other. Let's rally here. Yeah, let's move here. Let's do this. But they're all in there because they've all been directly affected by our desire to put people in a damn cage.
Yes. Gracias, Jorge. Yes, yes. This is exciting. I wish I had more time. So moving on, and hopefully we'll have time at the end for questions. We'll definitely share email addresses and Twitter accounts. I realized we had some technical sound issues on Facebook. So before this broadcast is over, I will reshare those videos so you'll be able to see them, and we'll share the link. I want to skip around a little bit, and I want to talk about, on our pillars, we also included protecting our democracy. And as we alluded to, the current administration, what's happening now in Georgia, what's happening now in Florida, just happening everywhere with taking away our right to vote. I want to go back to Jorge Vasquez here in New York City to talk a little bit about this pillar, why we chose it, and the integral work that LatinoJustice Parole does in securing our democracy, which we've been doing for over 50 years, I believe. So Jorge Vasquez, if you could go ahead and kick that off. No, I'll share the screen in a second.
Yeah, so it's imperative that when we look at what's happening within the criminal justice system, we look at what's happening in the context of our democracy also. Blacks and Latinx individuals are unequivocally sentenced to harsher punishment than their white counterparts over and over again. And in many states, individuals who are on parole probation are unable to participate in the electoral process and voting. They, for one reason or another, those states believe that it's okay to permanently disenfranchise them. What we saw in Florida in the midterm of 2018 was that there was a ballot initiative that was nonpartisan, and that by a supermajority, the majority of individuals in Florida came out and said, we don't want our people who are formerly incarcerated to lose their right to vote. That city, and that doesn't sit right with us. And recently what happened was that there was a stay at the Supreme Court after a court decided that individuals in Florida who are formerly incarcerated and have not paid whatever fines or penalties that were associated with their conviction are able to participate in the democracy. That case is pretty complicated, but to break it down to its simplest form, there are individuals who were convicted of a crime in Florida and sentenced to some sort of financial punishment, a fine or a fee to pay it. Florida has no accounting for many of these fines and fees, and there's no way of individuals being able to pay it back if they wanted to. So what we have is a system where individuals are supposed to be able to reintegrate into society, be able to participate, and we have states like Florida that are saying we don't want you to ever participate again. And we at LatinoJustice believe that no one should lose their right to vote. If we look at some of the safest states in the country, if we look at some of the safest territories, those are places where individuals can vote even if they're serving a prison sentence. So when we look at Maine, we look at Vermont, also ironically the whitest states in the country. When we look at Puerto Rico, we see places where, one, there's a high voter turnout. We are talking about 80, 90% of all eligible voters are coming out to vote. And that's good. That's actually super important. And if we're talking about reform, if we're talking about what works or doesn't work for a system, then it's imperative to make sure that individuals who are incarcerated are able to participate in the democracy, especially when you think about it from a budgetary standpoint, and you note that much of our state's budgets go towards incarcerating folks. So how are we preventing those with firsthand knowledge to what's happening with those funds from participating in our democracy? And I'll be remiss if I didn't mention, many of these laws happen once individuals, Blacks, were freed and able to vote, right? And I'd like to, I guess, give a quick shout out to our colleagues at New Jersey Institute for Social Justice that lead a 1844 No More campaign that we're a part of, where we were able to ensure that our brothers and sisters on parole and probation in New Jersey are able to vote. The District of Columbia recently passed legislation that we're hoping the mayor signs, and we're encouraging folks in New York to also pass legislation to ensure that our brothers and sisters who are formerly incarcerated and because of the systemic racism within sentencing are able to participate in our democracy.
And two questions for both of you, because this is so integral to the work we do. And so often you always hear folks saying, you know, voting is the only form of change, which couldn't be further from the truth, but it is integral to what we're doing. So I guess for you, Jorge, Renaud, if you could speak a little bit about disenfranchisement of the vote, disenfranchisement of folks through the criminal justice system, you know, and just another obstacle to living. And then Jorge Vasquez, if we can come back to you and you can talk about intimidation at the polls, because what I'm reading a lot about now is the GOP dismantling that, but then also police officers being sent to the polls, entire districts being shut down, New Helen one open, and I believe in leaders in this field. So just to hear a little bit more about your work. So maybe Jorge and Renaud, if you could talk a little bit about disenfranchisement, and this will lead into probably our next and final section about collateral consequences. But yeah.
Yeah, well, disenfranchisement is basically just taking away the voice and the right and actually the responsibility of an individual to partake in the decision as to who is actually going to be making the decisions that govern our daily lives, while still the government keeping the right to take our money via taxes. Because that's one of the reasons that most of the organizations that I know of formerly incarcerated individuals do not like the word returning citizen, is because we have been the right to vote has been taken away from us, and yet they are still taxing our income. But again, it's part of disenfranchisement is actually part of the colonizers' idea of saying that we are going to find a way that anything that you do to not allow you to have a voice in whatever it is, the policies or the laws or the ordinances or whatever practices actually go into governing your behavior. And I think part of that is the assumption, and let's just debunk that now, that everyone who's been involved with the criminal justice system is going to vote a certain way. They're just like the individuals out here, right? Individuals who are incarcerated have all sorts of views on society and on economic justice and on birth control and on race relations and on gender relations, and they're going to vote their way. They're not all going to vote Democrat, they're not all going to vote Republican, I think. But I think that's one of the myths that go along with disenfranchisement. In Texas, of course, everyone who's been convicted of a felony and is on parole or probation, right, cannot vote until you're off paper. And that's quite a few million people right now in this state.
I think that's a good transition as well. Jorge, I don't know if you're able to talk about the work that our esteemed colleague Kira and yourself, and I believe Esperanza Segura, when she worked with us, were doing on Amendment 4 in Florida. I believe the Supreme Court just legalized the poll tax.
Yeah, you're right. And if I could expand on that question a little bit, I think what we're seeing is that whenever there's an uprise of power, there's going to be a limitation to democracy. And if we want to change the status quo, then we need to make sure that we're allowing individuals their opportunity to participate in our republic, and our republic being a democracy where individuals are able to vote. We, as a nation, believe in the concept of one person, one vote. And this idea that you're going to prevent someone from voting because of a conviction just doesn't sit well. especially when we know that there are systemic racism within the sentencing schemes of the United States, especially when we know that Black and Latinxes are disproportionately sentenced to harsher punishments, even sometimes facing different charges when they have a similar offense. And when I say that, I mean that somebody who's convicted of, let's say, stealing an item could be charged with, you know, are you charged, let's say Florida, for example. In Florida, if you steal something that's worth $200 or more, that's considered a felony. And that $200 or more item that the person is convicted of stealing could permanently prevent the person from participating in the democracy. However, if what we saw with Amendment 4 and what individuals in Florida organizing around this issue also saw is that oftentimes when the person was not Black, when the person was not Latinx, they got the benefit of what's the worth of the item. What was the item worth at the time? So for example, if you stole a cell phone, right, and the cell phone is worth $200 at the store, but as soon as you walk out the store, if you try to resell that phone, then it's drastically less, right? Well, that drastically less benefit means it's not a felony. It means you don't get permanently disenfranchised. It means you don't have to face up to at least a year in prison for a punishment, but that benefit generally isn't given to Black or brown people. So knowing that, and looking at other states that had similar practices like New Jersey, the people in Florida organized. And thanks to Desmond Meeks, thanks to David Ayala, our former colleague, they were able to create a ballot initiative where by a supermajority, the people of Florida decided that this was enough, that you're more than your worst mistake, that democracy is about opportunity. It's not about a chance. And that if we want individuals to have an opportunity, then it's imperative that they be able to participate in our democracy. And also, democracy is a learned trait. It's a learned character. It's something that's done repetitively. So it's imperative for children to see their parents voting so that way they could grow up and have that habit of voting too. And if we're voting for our district attorneys, if we're voting for our judges, if we're voting for our sheriffs, these are people who have instant power on our criminal justice system. And the people who either say this person is going to get a program, we're going to need to help this person, or this person is going to get prison, those people are voted into office. And it's imperative that those who are directly impacted have a say. Right, I think one of the beautiful things about LatinoJustice, one of the beautiful things about speaking with the Jorge Renauds of the world is that they're able to give you the insight that many of us don't have. Think about this. There are states where you are unallowed to vote, yet you can have a candidate run for Congress who's formerly incarcerated.
Mm. Mm. I think on that note, and gracias, Jorge, it's really easy to narrate this one. You know, I want to transition into our second to last pillar. We're not going to have time to get to all of them, but this is important. It's collateral consequences. I think there's this myth that folks think a bad person does a crime and they go to jail and they pay their time and that's it. And that can be further from the truth. Couldn't be further from the truth. So one of the pillars we have is to end the damage of collateral consequences. So I'm going to pitch it to Jorge Renaud, and then maybe we can wrap up. I want to show the videos again. And if folks have questions, please start getting questions into us. Our colleague Mike Amador will feed those to us. So please put questions in your webinar. Please put questions in the Facebook chat. So I'm gonna give it to you, Jorge, to talk about collateral consequences.
Yes, first, I want to make a quick addendum to vote in Florida and a cautionary tale to organizers everywhere. If you're involved in abolition, I think the vote in Florida was restored to people with criminal convictions other than those who had convictions for homicide or sexually related cases, which means that a couple of 100,000 people with criminal convictions still were denied the right to vote. It was kind of a deal with the devil. I understand that, but I think that we would hope that if that were to continue in the future, that if people do seek to enfranchise again in other states, that either they bring everybody with them or they have a viable plan, a very publicly stated plan to go back and get those individuals, to find a way to bring them, to bring everybody along. Yeah, collateral consequences. When you are, when the judge hits a gavel and you plead to something or you're convicted of something, they don't necessarily tell you that, you know what, that for the rest of your life, you're not going to be able to live in public assisted housing with your mother, that you're not going to be able to, that if you go to prison and you take and you learn how to be a plumber, that you're not going to be able to practice that when you get on the outside. There's people have done studies of the thousands of consequences that accrue, that are added on to individuals who have been who have criminal convictions, and the great majority of them have come within the last 10 or 15 years because of the perception, because of the narratives that are told people that that individual is not to be trusted, that you can't live with someone out here, someone who had a conviction for murder, or that someone who has a conviction for burglary should not be allowed to work in residential housing because that person is surely going to steal something. That is a public perception, and I think the way to change that stuff, of course, is to first to educate the public, and that is to let them know that, you know what, that there are 10 million people arrested in this country every damn year, right? And they're your neighbors, your brothers, your sisters, and that is not necessarily a function of the nature of an individual, but of the system that has criminalized almost every aspect of our behavior. Right, and that we need to start looking at the strictures and the restrictions that we are placing on these individuals. Right. Okay, I think maybe that should be enough. I think maybe we should move on some. So yeah,
we have an amazing question from a folkloric band here in New Jersey. I don't know if you'll check them out. It's called Segunda Quimbamba Folkloric Incorporated. I hear they're great. Their lead singer is very talented. Check them out. Just a plug for them. I don't know who they are, but I'm assuming. The question from Mr. Segunda is there a gap between what you all promote on this talk and our abuelas and abuelos? If so, how big of a gap? And what can we do to narrow it? Thank you, Segunda. Do y'all want to take?
Yeah, I'd like to address that very quickly. My mother, before I went to prison, was very much she was era de Mexico, right? Grew up here, finally became a citizen at the age of 60. She was very much, no te juntes con aquel, don't be involved with that individual, don't do this, y aquel es marihuano. Yes, very much so. When I went to prison, and she became involved with other groups, the nurturing abuela that was within her became an activist. Is that going to happen to everybody? I don't know. But I think what can be done to change it, to narrow that gap, is to create more stories of individuals, to bring the individuals like myself, like Jorge's family, who have been incarcerated, and show las abuelas how big that community is.
And I would just say, we have two other questions. Let's do this. I want to chime in really quickly. We have two other questions that maybe Jorge Vasquez could answer. I'm going to show the films. We'll have closing thoughts. We'll be done. And then we'll have to send Diana Medina some flowers. They were giving her a heart attack. So we'll send her some flowers and some chocolates. So the other thing, our Brownsville convening is an annual convening that we have, and there were abuelas and abuelos, and it was conversations we were having with them, breaking it down, showing them that there shouldn't be a stigma, how we're targeted for this. I think our mini documentaries seek to address this. I think the work that we're doing on the ground, training our folks to engage the abuelas and abuelos and the tias and all of that is seeking to address that.
I think there was a radio commercial that Juan Cartagena had brought to our attention back in the midterm election in 2018, and while driving, I was able to hear it. And it was a Spanish commercial, and it said, to the extent, I'm paraphrasing, but, you raise them, and you give them all they need to succeed in society. And then they make a mistake, one little mistake. And because of that one mistake, the rest of their life is forever changed, right? And understanding that people are more than their worst mistake, but also understanding these collateral consequences, which there are over 4,000 for something as simple as a simple marijuana conviction could permanently exclude you from public housing, but also from attending college if you need financial aid. It also can exclude you from qualifying for mortgages. It could disqualify you from even opening up your own businesses to working in municipal government. And I see that one of the questions was about students and cops arresting students at schools. And I think it's important.
Let's read the question real quick. Let's
Okay.
do a stack and then we can get out. So the first question is from Zulma. And the question, and Jorge Vasquez, we could take this and I'll stack them. What do you think about incarcerating students in Florida who are fighting in schools and police reports show a criminal offense that makes a student face a felony when the situation shouldn't escalate to the judicial system? Question 2, I'm going to stack them all together. This is in regard to voter disenfranchisement. Is the actual item to change voter disenfranchisement of ex quote-unquote felons, we don't use that word, locally, by state, by federal law? Where and how do you advocate? And the last question we're going to take, well, I think we already answered this, but the last question, do you support abolishing the police? And if so, what do you do when a crime occurs? How do you keep the community safe? So let's play rapid fire. So let's do the first question, 1 minute for you, Jorge Vasquez, and then maybe I'll go to you, Jorge Renaud, for the other minute. All right, first question about Florida.
With regards to Florida, there's no reason that students should be being arrested and being charged with criminal matters. Florida's laws on the books are some of the most biased laws. Somebody could get arrested in Florida for resisting without protest, and that would change their life forever. We need to make sure that we're getting cops out of our schools. We need to get school officers out of our public schools. I think everyone is probably familiar with the recent incident in Florida earlier this year, where we saw a 6-year-old being cuffed away for behaving like a 6-year-old. In New York City, we've had similar cases that I litigated prior to going to LatinoJustice around students behaving like students and police being called and students being arrested. I think we need to make sure that we, whenever possible, that we're treating students like students and not like criminals, and understanding that our laws are written, some of them from a culturally biased perspective. And if we want to ensure fair treatment, then it's imperative that we aren't running to law enforcement because we believe that the person might be behaving a certain way.
Gracias, Jorge. Okay, so now let's jump into the question about abolishing the police. We'll go back to voter disenfranchisement. We'll show some videos, do a close, and then we'll be happy. We'll be good. So I'm usually the production person. I'm not in front of the camera, so that's why you see this grizzly here. Anyways, let's get the camera off of my face and onto the beautiful Jorge Renaud to answer, what do we mean by defunding, abolish the police? You have 1 minute, sir.
Okay, defund means it runs a gamut from take away all their money and totally abolish them to take away some of their money and give it to the communities. Those of us who are or abolitionists say, one, that how do you keep the community safe? Well, you are assuming that crime is going to happen, but 2, what do you want to do as a community member? If someone breaks into your house and takes your stereo, are you okay with maybe sitting down and having a conversation and see why they stole that stereo? And okay with maybe having a conversation with them and their family and restoring that to you and having them do community service or something? Why must it be that someone has to come arrest them and take them and put them in a cage? Up to now, that's been our response. So my point is, ask the communities themselves that are facing harm what they want to do with individuals. That's the individuals themselves who've been hurt. Don't ask me what to do in your community, okay? So that's kind of, that's going to be the answer for me on that one, okay? What do you want to do?
I love that. It's a beautiful answer. Beautiful answer. And you can catch Jorge Renaud on Twitter at, I forgot what it was, Antonio Renaud.
Renaud Antonio.
Renaud Antonio. And Renaud is French, but he's an OG Chicano. Go figure. I don't know how that happened, but go figure that. Anyway, so question about voter disenfranchisement. Jorge, do you remember the question, or do you need me to bring it up again?
I don't remember the question. I'm sorry.
It was more of a legal one, so I think Jorge should deal with it.
Yes. Let's just, that's white.
The actionable item?
Yes, you want to read it? You want to read it? Velvety Pipes? We're going to get a treat here. Go for it.
Is the actionable item to change voter disenfranchisement of ex-felons local, by state, or by federal law?
These are local laws. Each state runs their election, including congressional elections and federal elections, have to comply with state law, and the states are able to decide who's qualified to vote. So it's imperative that people get engaged with their local politics. And I say that to say, you know, get involved with organizations like LatinoJustice. If you go to our website, you could sign up to volunteer to do election poll monitoring. We do quite a bit of work around engaging voters and protecting voters and educating voters on what their rights are. And it's important that even if you're not a registered voter or someone who's not qualified to vote because your state doesn't allow you to vote or because you are not a citizen, that you still have the ability to empower voters and let them know what their rights are. And as we prepare for this November, it's imperative that every eligible voter, especially Latinx voters, which make up the largest minority group at the poll this year with an estimated 32 million eligible voters, each cast a ballot. And that individuals who are turning 18 prior to November 3rd, which is the presidential election, register to vote and follow our work at LatinoJustice.
Gracias, Jorge. A shout out to Lavana Egbani, I believe from Texas, who's following us right now on Twitter. I believe she's part of the Texas.
Yeah, she's part of the network here, Lavina.
Awesome. Yeah. And Brandy Recio as well. A huge thank you for both of y'all. We're excited to have you in our movement familia. So next piece up, let me show the videos that weren't able to be shown before that. Then we'll wrap it up, and then we will go to the FTD website and send Diana some flowers. Sounds good? And all right, here we go. Here we go. All right, here's the video. Let me get and again, this is a graphic clip. So if you need to turn your camera off for a minute, this is a graphic clip, and then after this, we'll show our trailer. So here's our clip.
Lift your hand! Lift your hand! We've been 311. Shots fired! Shots fired!
Ruben! Policia! Manos! Manos!
Luis, are you okay? You all 5 men! 5 men! Papa!
Colonialization, racial dominance, the notion that there is a superior race in the United States has everything to do with control of a particular population.
Our second video coming up. This is, here we go.
For as long as this country has existed, the dominant narrative has depicted Latinos as alien, as illegal, and as somehow predisposed to criminality. These are stubborn remnants of a colonizing practice that seldom gets discussed, but yet is still embedded in the U.S. criminal justice system. In order to decolonize oppression, we must first make visible the voices of those most directly impacted by it. Latinos have historically been overrepresented in the penal system, and yet underrepresented in the tables that determine their fates. The stories you're about to see go beyond buzzwords that currently dominate the public dialogue about criminal justice to show the faces of those directly impacted. This is what systemic oppression looks like. The criminal justice system needs to not only be reformed, it needs to be dismantled. It needs to be destructured. It needs to be decolonized.
All right, and we're back. So that is the trailer for our Decolonizing Justice mini-doc series. So if you want to learn more about that, check it out below, decolonizedjustice.org. There will be a place for you to sign up, get more info from us. If you want to contact us, my email address, just give it to you right now, is jsaldana@latinojustice.org. It's Saldaña. I don't know why I say Saldaña. I know it's Saldaña. My name is Jerónimo Saldaña. Damn it.
You've been
I always do that. I have been. Too much colonization. So here's, well, mine is jsaldana@latinojustice.org. Jorge Renaud, what's your email address?
Renaud at LatinoJustice.org.
How do you spell Renaud? People don't know how to say it.
It says right there, brother. R-E-N-A-U-D. Unless you're on the radio. I don't know.
And then for you, my friend, Jorge Luis Vasquez, what's your email address?
It's jvasquez at LatinoJustice.org.
Beautiful. And final words. Yes. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Just JVASQUEZ at LatinoJustice.org.
Awesome. Please hit us up if you have any questions, if you want to get involved. We shared the website to the mini docs. We shared the website, here it is, to our homepage. Boom. Very simple. Now, closing thought. So maybe I can say a couple of words. Then we'll go to Jorge Luis Vasquez and Jorge Renaud if you want to close this out. So again, huge gracias to Diana Medina, Lydia Diaz, and Mike Amador, who have made all of this happen. This is a third series. This was Diana's brainchild, so huge appreciation for her. And then also appreciation for all of our staff, including folks like Ravi, who we love dearly, who is now in our office, back in our office. A huge gracias to Ravi and Marisabel and all the rest of the amazing staff. So again, my name is Jerónimo Saldaña. I am the co-director of our Reenvision Justicia program. And I'm proud of the work we do, and I'm excited that we get to work to end the criminalization of our gente, that we get to work on advocacy and narrative change, that we're able to say the names of the Latinxes who've been murdered and the Black folks who've been murdered, that we're working to build bridges with our gente. I'm excited to continue to do this work with Latino Justice. I'm excited to continue to build a Reenvision Justicia network and to provide more resources to our community and ensure that all folks are supported who are being criminalized, and we can get to the day when they're no longer criminalized. And we've defunded the police, which means we've reinvested in our communities and have no need for that model. So gracias a todos. Pass it on to Jorge Luis Vasquez for his thoughts, and then to Jorge Renaud to finish it off. So
if there's one thing we want people to leave with, is the importance of empowering and educating your people back home, wherever home is, and the need for Latinxes to be involved in our democracy process and how our democracy process is intertwined with our criminal justice work. And we ask that you follow us on social media at Latino Justice on our platforms. Please visit our website, and please share our Bad Hombre series, which you can find on our website, LatinoJustice.org. And, please continue discussion, continue talking about what you heard today. Invite us to these forums. And if you're not part of our network, please sign up to be part of our network, so that way we could work together, because this is a communal effort that's going to require all of our efforts.
Jorge Renaud, who's that gentleman next to you as we're giving out info?
Yeah, quickly, someone asked me the other day on the Facebook page, we were trying to bring attention to the heat in Texas prisons, and she said, what about the children, the sons of immigrants, the children of immigrants who were locked up in detention or whatever? And right, how come we're not advocating for them? They deserve it more. And I try to respond in a way that said it's the same fight, that we are advocating for them, that we are, in fact, those of us who are doing this with everything that we have are in fact fighting for those individuals, are in fact fighting for the individuals who are in prisons. But the thing is, we're not going to make a distinction between a child who's in detention and someone who's on death row. We are advocating for another approach to justice in this country that has disproportionately affected the Black and brown individuals in this country. And people ask, well, how can we help them? And the thing is that they need to understand that the power lies with them, that I don't know how many individuals we have on staff, 20, 22, 23. We're not going to persuade the parole board to do something, but that the relatives of 140,000 people who incarcerated TCJ can damn sure persuade the parole board to do something. Okay, but it's going to be more than just going out and marching at a unit, more than just marching at the Capitol. You actually have to get involved and educate yourself and inform yourself about the processes that matter to these people. And some of that is by voting them the hell out of office. Okay, so anyway, yeah, I'm proud to be part of this organization and part of this effort. Thank you for having me on.
Gracias a todos. And lastly, we should thank our Mero chief, Juan Cartagena, for his vision, his faith, his trust, his leadership.
Mero, jefe.
Mero. Sí. So, gracias a Juan, gracias a ustedes, and take care. Thank you all. Abrazos, besos. Mwah.
I didn't punch the dog, man. I pushed him.